Good evening. Welcome to the Bennington Select Board meeting. This June 10th, 2019, we're in the Bennington Firehouse. And before we start our meeting tonight, I would like to ask the members to please introduce themselves. I'm Donald Campbell, I'm the chair. And let's go all the way to our town manager and start at that end.
Town Manager Stuart Hurd.
Do it a little more slowly, Stuart, because we...
Stuart Hurd.
Good evening, Jean Connor.
Good evening, Carson Thurber.
Hi, I'm Jim Carroll.
Hi, Jeannie Jenkins.
Good evening, Chad Gordon.
Bill Scully.
Nancy Lively, Secretary.
Very good. Thank you, Nancy, for being with us tonight. Let's see. Carson, I think you're up. If you would be willing to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. First order of business tonight is a consent agenda. We have the minutes of May 28th, and we have the warrants which have been circulated, and hopefully everybody's had a chance to talk to the town staff with any questions they have. May I have a motion on this, please?
Move to accept.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion about either the minutes or the warrants? If not, I would ask all in favor to please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Okay. Minutes and warrants have been approved. Next, we're going to move on to our citizens' comment period, which is the time we reserve to hear residents' thoughts about topics not on the agenda. We welcome your insights, but because topics are unworn, this is not a time for board discussion or decision-making. We ask you to please state your name when you approach the mic, refrain from making personal comments, and keep your comments under 3 minutes. First person on our list tonight is Logan Snow. Oh yes, you got the microphone set up properly. Thank you, Stuart. Good evening, Logan. Thanks for being here.
Hey everybody, I am Logan Snow, and I am here to represent a group of Bennington residents. We've been meeting over the concerns regarding the transparency and the oversight of the Bennington Police Department. We believe that the BPD has been operated without oversight for too long. This has created an environment of distrust. Information filters to the Select Board and the BPD where decisions are made. However, the citizens are given minimal chance to weigh in. So I guess my question is, do you believe that transparency is important in government?
We all do believe that transparency is important, yes.
Good. And how are the bids published for, for people to put in their bids?
So right now, we've hired, as you know from our conversations, we've hired Curtis Reed, a consultant in Brattleboro, who's very good with this stuff. And he's been leading us through this process.
Yep.
And Stuart, would you like to talk about how the bids are being received and what the process is there?
Yes, there is an RFP that has been out in the community, actually nationwide, for the last practically 25 days. The due date for proposals is June 14th. They will be submitted to Rob Wilmington, who is counsel for the town, and then dispersed to Curtis, to the town staff, obviously, and we will get together, review those proposals, and determine a vendor to do the police department assessment that we have been working towards.
And was that published on the town's website, or where was it published?
I believe the RFP went out on the town's website, but it was also sent specifically to groups that were identified by Curtis as being able to do the work.
Okay, so they were selected then?
Yes.
So it wasn't as much open to people submitting their bids?
I would have to say no.
Interesting. Okay, so how was the banner given the information? Because it didn't seem like it was really made public to the town as much as we were told kind of after the fact.
The banner knew from select board meetings that we had decided to move in this process, and that the staff was then authorized to work with Mr. Reed to develop the request for proposals and accept their submittals.
Okay, so it was discussed at a select board meeting then?
I believe it was, yes.
Okay, good.
Logan, this isn't really a Q&A period, but I would like to say that the reason we hired Curtis was to make sure that we were being as responsible as possible. And one of his big and most important things, drivers, is that an RFP is necessary to make sure that everybody has access to it. So,
Yeah.
so not just the usual suspects, but that it's essentially an effort to make sure that there's an equitable process for submitting applications for the
Exactly, yeah,
RFP.
that's the biggest
So
concern.
that's why we've been following his direction meticulously.
And what part do you feel as though we're not accomplishing?
It feels like I think that there's a lot of people who feel like they're still in the dark with this. There's been a lot of questions floating around if there's going to be a civilian oversight committee included in this, because people feel like there's a lack of transparency.
So this is the communication we need from you. I mean,
Yeah.
let's hear your concerns about it, so it sounds like.
Sure. So my concerns are that it's going to be like the bar report. If and when it comes out, the bar report, that it's going to be really blacked out, that we're not going to have a lot of information. I think that there's a lot of people who want to take part in the local democracy, people who want to be present and understand what's going on. So I guess that's my big thing is, can we get some transparency and maybe a little bit more communication about this?
Well, I have to tell you that I'm really disappointed that you would compare the select board with the bar report.
I'm not comparing.
Let's not let this devolve into it.
No, I'm not comparing. I'm saying when the investigation is completed from the investigation into the Bennington Police Department, I just want to make sure that it doesn't come all blacked out and that there's, I don't know, transparency so that people can see what the report shows.
So just in very general terms, I think, this board is really committed to transparency.
Yeah.
We really are committed to a true inquiry into our police force in terms of what can be, where we can take it that will be best for the whole group. And that's why we didn't just try to do it yourself. We hired a professional, and if you know Curtis's work, he does very good work. He's very well known in the field and in many different fields. But I would certainly encourage you to be in touch with him or to look at his website and see the other work he's done.
So should I reach out to Curtis about a civilian oversight committee being included?
No, I don't think he's going to be able to decide that. But I would encourage you to look at his work and to look at the kind of thing that he's doing.
Okay, so who could we talk to about that then, I guess is my question.
Well, I think we've received your feedback that, you would like to have a civilian oversight committee.
Yeah, we all would.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
We all would.
We'll take that into consideration.
We'll take it under consideration, but, these things are very delicate, and so we are, notwithstanding Jim's comment, this is not going to be the bar report. This is a truly inquisitive look into how we can really be doing things the best we can.
Well, and I think we're hiring somebody to help us figure out how to engage the public. I mean, I know Chicago recently put their civilian review board together, and they were really happy.
Yeah,
The police
good.
chief was, but they too went and hired somebody to help them figure out how to integrate
Yeah,
the general public with the PD. And we're only at the beginning stages of hiring somebody to help us hire somebody, because I don't think any of us specialize in
So we're not going to
Absolutely.
commit to anything right now. We're not going to tell you how the process goes. We're going to wait and see.
I just want to know that there's going to be transparency, that is a thing that's going to happen. If there's nothing to hide, there's nothing to hide.
That's how we feel. We're committed
Exactly.
to transparency, yes.
Good. Okay, so let's keep
Yep.
that going then, I guess.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for coming. Sam, I can't read all of your writing here, but you're next. Please give us your full name and tell us what's on your mind tonight.
My name's Samuel Silverstein, and my name's Carmen. This is my own personal comment, no other association. I have a few concerns that have been going around Bennington, and one being Morgan Spring. You know of the process that's been going on since late December of last year through the DRB board. Was that line in the banner? I can't recall what's the process because of the appeal. If this wasn't in the banner, how do people weigh in on the situation? There again, the general public in the town doesn't read the banner. I don't even know if it was on the town's website. So you had 30 days to make a statement to appeal to the cause of Morgan Springs. Last select board meeting, I heard we're investing $70,000 on the old Scarfoni property, happening in June. Has that happened yet?
We're going to do an update of this at the end of the meeting.
I don't mind doing it now.
All right.
The closing right now is tentatively scheduled for June 21.
Okay, so we're moving forward on this project?
Yes, we are.
Okay. The investment is $400,000 to extend the present location at Morgan Spring to Scarfoni property, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And we do not have, will this be going out to bid this year or next physical bid?
A lot will depend on where the financing comes from.
Right. And how our budget situation is, which I know in the next 2 years, we've got a lot to go through. We've got 2 fire apparatuses that also need to be reported. Sadly enough, the most general persons here for citizens of Bennington, but I just find at the time for $400,000, thank you for the grants, because without those grants, we wouldn't get a lot of projects funding, but I just have a real strong, where is this money going to be coming from? So because of one person that complained on a certain location about a less busy street to a busier street, that's my biggest concern, and naturally, people that don't read the banner are not even aware of this project, so this is where I'm speaking up. My next concern is the image of Bennington. As you know, through social media, we're being watched morning and night, and people decide whether they want to work here, live here, or eat here. And we have to keep up that image. We're under the microscope 24/365. And I mean, we have ordinances for vegetation, we have ordinances for other things, and I think that they have to come to a focal point that it's not just one day that we have Green Up Day, it's every day that we have Green Up Day. There's an image how people can view us. I mean, from tip over cones to trash on the street. I know the town does what it can, but I think citizens need to get involved in order to do this. And I know most of us work out there and I got other concerns, but if we really want to sell Bennington, we've got to watch out for our image to do that. And speaking of ordinances, the 4 corners, we've been pretty civil in protests. And when protests are not announced through the town of Bennington, I think we need to make a proposal, maybe get it on an agenda item of getting an ordinance about the right to protest. Manchester's got a similar protest that if there's 50 or more in attendance, they got to make an application through the town office of the who, the what, the why. God forbid if something should happen under that protest. Most people don't even know that a protest is going unless Bennington PD is notified or you see citizens on the 4 corners. Thank God they've been civil, but with the right to protest and First Amendment rights, I think we really need to look into that ordinance that Manchester's got. Thank you for allowing me to speak of my concerns. Thank you.
Sam, thank you for your comments. Stuart, I don't think this gets you off the hook for an update when we get to the manager's report. I think I'd like to have you address the sort of how we're thinking about this financially. Sam, just so you know, we are looking at the whole package. We're looking at the cost savings to water bills. We're looking at the whole thing. So Stuart can talk a little bit more about that when we get to the end. Thank you for your comments. The next item on our agenda is a possibly complicated combination of good things, and we're going to ask Shannon Barsadi to come up and at least to begin with talk about the cultural plan, right?
That's right. It's not going to be complicated.
Okay.
So I'm going to speak just a little bit about the Bennington County Cultural Plan, and then I'll invite Greg Van Houten and Alex Jones up to talk about the Bennington Area Arts Council and Bennington Arts Weekend. So the Bennington County Cultural Plan came together through the efforts of many before it, and then the BCRC applying to a municipal planning grant that was a partnership with both the town of Bennington and the town of Manchester. And why a cultural plan? Sorry, this might be a little bit hard to read, but I think there's more of a recognition across the state that the arts are an engine for economic development, for job creation, for tourism, for community engagement. So you wouldn't necessarily think of a municipal planning grant to fund this, but I think it makes a lot of sense. Just a few statistics that Bennington County has been named for a number of years along the top 10 of the most vibrant arts small communities in America. by the National Center for Arts Research. So some of this is to gather the data so that we can sort of toot our own horn and really let people know about what a strong arts and cultural community we have in Bennington across the county. Some of the history Greg will speak about, but in 2012, when the Vermont Council on Rural Development came and facilitated the community visit here in town, one of the things that grew out of this was meetings of culturals and a cultural planning committee that really is what led to this plan, ultimately. And then moving on, some of the participants more recently on the steering committee, and I should also mention Julia Dixon, who put the plan together. She's an expert in this creative economy and has done this work in a few different places, but is really well known in the Berkshires. And she put together the steering committee, which includes many of the people from the town of Bennington, Pownell, North Bennington, Arlington, all the way up to Manchester, Reedsboro. And some of our steering committee members are here. If you want to raise your hand if you're a part of the steering committee. We've got Matthew Perry from the Vermont Arts Exchange, Alex Jones. So they are the ones that really move this forward. And the process was a lot of data collection, research and review, getting to this final product. And I think this slide is really the most captivating to me, is the number of people who were participants in this, either online surveys, interviews, meeting locations. So people were really engaged, and that's a credit to Julia and to the steering committee for that engagement. I think a few of the things that came out of it, 86% of the respondents were from Bennington County. We had 75%, 74% from the southern part of Bennington County. And the overall perception of arts and culture is very high. I think one thing that came out too was a real interest in music in Bennington County and drawing more music here. Some of the quotes that came out of this, which if you want to look at the plan, it's going to be up on the town website. It will be available at the public libraries, also at the Bennington Museum, and you can read more about what people had to say. Some of the goals, creative vibrancy, sector building, community engagement, and critical relationships. And then the strategies are outlined in the plan, and I think one of the things that I really appreciate as a community organizer about this plan is that really the goal is that this is not just going to sit on the shelf, but it can be used by different community groups. And so at the back of the plan, all of these strategies are laid out as, I don't know if you can't really see this, but each one is a worksheet that could be printed out and has specific recommendations, ideas from other communities. So for each of these areas, networking events, business training programs, creating a career pipeline for youth, communication tools for entrepreneurs. A curated indoor holiday market was something that came up as a great idea. And then more coordinated open studios across the county and connecting to the statewide initiative for open studios. And one of the things that the plan talks about is kind of the internal message amongst creatives to really organize themselves and strengthen relationships, and then the external cultural tourism message. So this really goes back to some of the work that I'm working on with the Vermont Begins Here campaign, is really building consensus around our arts and cultural assets and having them up on the new website that's going to be developed. Another thing that's, I think, countywide a great idea is an arts and culture trail and more signage for arts and cultural assets. More innovative art making, programming, and engagement activities. Pop-up events. A mechanism for shared leadership within the arts and cultural sector. And this idea of an online asset map. I've also heard of it called, Matt Perry said, an artist's yellow pages. I think that's a great idea. And those are just some highlights from the plan. So I'm going to invite Greg up to speak some more.
Who are you?
My name is Greg Van Houten. I own GVH Studio here in Bennington. I'm here to talk to you a little about the Bennington Area Arts Council. The Bennington Area Arts Council is the officially designated arts council of the town of Bennington, thanks to an act by the Bennington Select Board a year ago. That was a restatement of an act from 1989 when the original Arts Council was started. In 2012, the Bennington Select Board convened the community meetings here in town. Subsequent focus groups and action groups were formed to address the wants and needs identified in those meetings. The Better Bennington Corporation expanded their arts committee to become a town-wide engagement of the cultural community, beginning a period of cross-sector collaboration. The Cultural Bennington Planning Committee, now the Bennington Area Arts Council, has been meeting since 2013 with staff and monetary support from the BCRC, the BBC, the Chamber, the Town of Bennington, and now from members as well. In that time, we have produced community arts events, industry network meetings, professional development workshops, and provided promotional and managerial assistance to the members' initiatives. The reformed Arts Council Board of Directors has a term limit of 6 years to provide industry-wide involvement and maintain the vibrant energy needed to keep evolving. The Select Board, multiple Select Boards, have supported the efforts of these transformative organizations unanimously since 2013. For that, we thank you. That is a key to our success. Tonight, we have a plan in hand and culmination of one of our founding goals, which is the Regional Cultural Plan. This plan, like the efforts so far, has the potential to address the undervaluation, under-resourced, and underutilized arts economy in Bennington County through community partnerships in industry, government, and education. Once again, thank you for recognizing this opportunity and supporting our heritage that is the arts in Bennington, and for making this a priority for the town of Bennington. Every year we try to come back here, or we do come back here to update the Bennington Select Board on what's going on with the Arts Council. We are partners in this. This is something that was identified by the community, and we have been working with this and expanding. So I want to thank you for that. I now want to introduce you to Alexina Jones, who is our current president, who's going to tell you some of the things about the programming and some of the visions that she has, and make a request again.
Thanks,
thank
Greg.
you very much.
Don't go too far.
Thanks, Greg. Hi, my name is Alex Jones. As Greg said, I am the president of the Bennington Area Arts Council. I am also currently serving as acting director of operations with Bennington Museum. So I am here representing 2 of Bennington's cultural organizations. So this cultural plan, all of you have received it and had time to look it over maybe? It's a pretty exciting document. It's actually very user-friendly. It provides a great toolkit for anybody, and this applies to everyone in the audience who wants to take a look at it, find a path forward. It is meant to encourage creativity among our community. And really, what the Arts Council wants to do in this is to make it available and to connect people that are interested in making the arts happen here so that we don't exist in individual silos, but that we can create something pretty awesome together. So I'm going to we reviewed the slideshows, and I'm going to take you through a little bit of how the Bennington Arts Council can be involved in the support of this plan, and a little bit of what we do already. I will say that what I took away from this plan, it really validated a lot of the great things that are already going on in this community, thanks to the town, and in part for the efforts from various organizations around here, as well as what the Arts Council is trying to do. So we should be proud of what we have accomplished. We should not forget to remember that we are working hard, and we need to continue to promote ourselves in the good work that we have done. Of course, it also clearly illustrates that there is a lot more work to be done. And that is where we hope to step up or help to facilitate that. So as Sharon mentioned, there were 6 main strategies that Julia outlined in this plan. And in looking through these strategies, they're strategies for growing and integrating the arts in our community, I found that directly or indirectly, the Arts Council is involved in a little over half of each of those, which is a pretty hefty chunk for one organization. Of course, when you look at this as a partnership, maybe that's not such a heavy lift. So I'm going to start just with strategy 1, establish a toolkit for local creative producers. Basically, through networking events, we hope to connect creatives, that's artists, art organizations, across the media, industry, and geography. One of the ways that we are doing this right now at the Arts Council is through a program we're developing called an artist charrette. And that's a process whereby we are going to connect town officials, local leaders, and economic development professionals with the individuals who are responsible for growing and maintaining our arts community, the artists who are on the ground. We want to present a concern or an unmet need or a vision, not necessarily directly related to the arts, and we want to present this challenge statement to the artists in the hopes that maybe they will come at it from a different direction. So in fact, this coming Thursday is the first meeting in this process. We're going to develop that challenge statement, and then throughout the rest of the summer, we're going to begin to share that. And that is just an example of how we are beginning to connect the different sectors. And of course, we will keep people up to date on our website and on our Facebook page, which brings us to the next initiative in this plan. Julia Dixon says, create a communication tool for artists and creative entrepreneurs. Now, of course, the Arts Council has a Facebook page, we have a website, we have an email list already set up to provide news, job listings, calls for art, auditions, internships, space rentals, funding deadlines, workshops, and more. We're set up to do that. And now, of course, the task is getting people to submit and then getting people to use this space that we have created. Our website provides a press kit, templates for how to reach out to the media, as well as a contact list, and we have a PDF of the cultural plan on the website, so anyone can go there, download it. Again, it's a valuable, user-friendly toolkit that provides a roadmap forward. So that was just in strategy 1. And of course, we can do better. We are always trying to streamline our process, accepting suggestions, mixing things when they don't work, but that is part of a creative process in itself. I'm going to skip ahead to strategies 4 and 5. Those are creating an external cultural tourism message, which of course the Chamber and Shannon are working very hard to do, and then develop innovative art-making programming and engagement activities. Both of those strategies sort of feed into the next program that I would like to present to you. That's, of course, Bennington Arts Weekend, which I'm sure you are all familiar with. We are working on this year in collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce, the Vermont Arts Exchange, the BBC, and the town's Community Development Office. Bennington Arts Weekend is right around the corner. It is from August 2nd through 4th, and it was conceived as a means to integrate the Southern Vermont Craft Fair into a more inclusive town-wide programming event that would draw out-of-town visitors into the downtown center. Every year in the past, we had presented Explosion, spearheaded by Greg Van Houten, but this year we skipped that and decided to focus on making Arts Weekend a big success. Not that we won't come back to something like Explosion, but this year it seems like there's so much going on. We really wanted to put the emphasis on making Bennington a cultural hotspot that it should be. So for this weekend, on Friday night, August 2nd, the BBC is going to host a meet and greet, as they do traditionally, at the blacksmith shop downtown for the vendors at the fair. And then hopefully that will be followed by a movie screening on the soon-to-be-completed Merchants Park, pending completion and the weather. And then on Saturday, August 3rd, we have the Homebrew Festival, celebrating their 5th anniversary on Shields Drive. And that evening, as a showcase event for the weekend, the BBC and the Arts Council will present a free concert on the Merchants Park stage if it is completed and if it is not raining. We have a plan B in case that doesn't work out. The group that we want to host is Alex Torres and his Latin Orchestra. They are a nationally recognized salsa band with a huge local following. Matt Perry has had them several times at the Vermont Basement Music Series, and they draw a great crowd. They get people on their feet. It's a lot of fun. And this is a showcase event in that it is hopefully going to be one of the first major events to take place on the stage, and it can serve as a model for all the ways in which Merchants Park and the Splash Pad can be used in the future to engage and connect our community. I was adding up some of the numbers, and in total, the Craft Fair and the Homebrew Festival are going to see thousands of people participate, and we want to make sure that those people have a reason to come to the town center and spend their dollars at local businesses. We also want to offer family entertainment for the local population who may not be able to afford to purchase tickets to any of these events. Arts bring a vibrancy to the community, and they should be accessible to everyone. And so by offering an event like this that is free and open to the public in a downtown space, that really captures the essence of what makes Bennington a vibrant cultural community. You know, there are reasons why we are listed as one of the top cultural communities in the country. So, as I said, we want these events to be free to the public. And events like the concert are funded through sponsorships. And so we are inviting the town of Bennington to once again be a major sponsor at the $1,000 level. This is used to pay performing artists to provide proper facilities for events and to promote events for this community and beyond. Now, of course, I understand you've probably used your discretionary funding for this year. We have a new fiscal year coming up, so I put the proposal to you to see what you can do. It would be wonderful to have the support of the town behind us for this event. It dovetails nicely with what the cultural plan has outlaid. And I'll reiterate, cultural programming drives tourism traffic and makes Bennington an attractive place to live and work. And we think that it's important as a first step for enacting all of the things that the cultural plan can be. Once this plan is accepted, it falls to all of us, audience here included, to make sure that it doesn't just sit on the shelf. We hope that you, as members of the Select Board and the town of Bennington, will act as a key partner in these endeavors to ensure that arts are at the forefront of our efforts to grow and sustain Bennington. Thank you, and come to the show.
All right, thank you. We'll do a few board questions, so maybe don't go too far. I'd like to start out on behalf of the board just by thanking you for this gift. It's really a wonderful project. I would like to thank the 106 people that were part of creating it and the over 500 people whose input was included in it. So we're lucky to have this in front of us. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, as Greg well knows from being chair of the board, whenever something like this is proposed, it's always makes taxpayers nervous that this whole thing is being foisted onto the taxpayers. And anyone who's given this plan a careful read knows that that's not the case. This is really an exercise in partnership and an exercise in finding a lot of different people that can put their shoulder to the wheel. So I went through all of these strategies, and really there are only a few that require anything of the town, except for the once a year support that you ask for the event that you just mentioned. There's no place in this plan where the strategies list the town of Bennington as primary funder, and we're thankful for that. There's also only a few places where you've listed us as a potential lead, and I think the 5 areas that you mentioned are very appropriate. The sort of signs and wayfinding piece, the trails and the cultural trails piece, the possibility of a public art committee, the notion of shared leadership in terms of not having a county organization, but that maybe towns would do some shared leadership, and considering adopting some part of the cultural plan in some way into our town plan. Those are all very appropriate things for us to work on and not very expensive. So thank you for not setting us up for a really big expensive thing, but instead giving us something of tremendous value that could be a real game changer for our town. So having given that little preamble, I wonder if there are questions from the board for these folks about the cultural plan?
Or additional comments.
What's that?
Or just additional comments.
Or additional comments, yeah. Jim, go ahead.
Shannon? Yeah. You and I sit on the Commerce Committee in Montpelier, and you and I talked about Commissioner Wendy Knight and her top 3 things that draw people to the community. And surprisingly, it's weddings in the state of Vermont. Historic, things of historic significance, and cultural amenities. And I wonder, this plan and what has been presented fits right into what we hope to do with respect to marketing for Bennington. And I wonder if you could expand upon that, and if you've spoken with Wendy Knight, and what has come of that.
I exchanged some emails with, I believe her name is Heather, another assistant in the marketing. I can't remember her exact title. But yeah, I mean, just to get more information about what is successful for other towns. And I think that that was what really hit home, was that both arts and culture and recreation are really driving forces for tourism. So that's something that we're working on multiple fronts. And what's been great about this plan is that then we have the documentation and the consensus building that's been happening that really kind of jumpstarts this process.
So with respect to the marketing plan for the town, can you give us an update on that?
Well, I can't remember if it was at the last select board meeting, I mentioned that we did hire 802 marketing. We're going to have a meeting this week, actually, to get the whole process started and provide them with all the content that has already been created for Vermont Begins Here, including photography and copy, et cetera, and then laying out what that outline of the web is going to look like. And arts and culture is obviously a big part of that. So that's where we are right now. The goal for the launch of that site is like mid to late August.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions from board members? Jean?
Yeah, this is an amazing document. I spoke with you before the meeting started. It's not just research and numbers and data. It is extremely comprehensive on not only, it has that in there, but it really truly is a roadmap on how to accomplish a lot of these goals. So kudos to the person who developed this report. It's really, really valuable, and I really encourage people to go on the website and read it. It's worth the time for sure. How can we help you get this plan and all the information in front of the artistic community? We keep hearing, people don't hear about things because it's not in the banner. Well, the banner chooses to publish what they want to publish. It's, we can't really control that. So having an artist in my life, how are you going to communicate this so people know it exists and there's all these opportunities and they need help and volunteers and ideas and energy? So I'm just wondering how we can help you do that.
Well, I think the next step is really a comprehensive press release, that's going to go out in local media and is going to reach the public as well. And Dave LaChance from the banner has been a part of some of the steering committee discussions, because the banner, their weekend edition is really focusing in on the arts. And so one thing that came out of these discussions was it makes sense to have consensus on where the events calendar is going to be. And at this point, it makes a lot of sense for that to be the banner. So the banner is a big part of the discussion moving forward. And as far as ways to get it out, do you guys have any other suggestions?
We both do.
Yeah.
Well, very specifically, you can adopt it as part of the town plan. That's news. When you get through with it, you get down to the nitty-gritty and you're comfortable with it, or needs to make edits or something like that, you can make it a priority. You can make it part of the Bennington Town Plan. This is a collaborative document. It was paid for with a grant and an in-kind donation from the BCRC. It did not cost the taxpayers any money. To let it sit on a shelf, I think, would be an insult to the organizations and the taxpayers. This is something that needs to be absorbed and prioritized, and that's news. And then get on your own social media platforms and tell people about it. Don't wait for it to pop up in the banner or on somebody's individual news feed. That's not how it works anymore. So, if Shannon posts it on the town site Facebook page and you have a Facebook page, share it, talk it up. Mention it at the Elks Club, wherever you hang out. Tell people what's going on, why it's good. You hear somebody snickering about it, point out why it's important and how it creates jobs and how it brings businesses. If somebody comes here to build a shoe factory, they're going to sit down with the town plan and they're going to look at appropriate sites and all kind of marketing studies. Well, if they come here to open a theater or open a recording studio or a musical education department or something, they should have that same ability with a cultural town plan. So that's my suggestion.
Would you consider, going to Rotary meetings and, doing...
Absolutely, yeah.
Taking it on the road?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely should be a road show.
Yeah.
It should be happening at both sides of the highway. Manchester and the North Shire are just as involved in this. So we're going to a meeting in a week or two in Arlington, where it'll be the collaboration of the steering committees and people involved in it. And I think that's the message is, okay, now you go back to your shires and you get this thing out there and let
And
people know.
there's tons of opportunity to get the schools involved and.
Education is a huge,
Yeah.
huge part of this.
Yeah.
Without arts and education, we're doomed.
Right.
It's not going anywhere. And you have an entire generation in your school system that you can launch into the world with an arts education. And that helps keeps these organizations afloat. It keeps interest in your museums and your theater groups and all those things that create jobs and keep people in town. You mentioned weddings. If you don't have a band, to play at your wedding, then what's the point of having a wedding there? If you don't have musicians in your community, that's one thing that suffers, and it has in this town at times. Right now you've got musicians, so we try to support that.
One of the things that struck me about this was reading that Bennington College was the first college ever to add visual arts as an equal degree, that you could major in visual arts. So I would say, if not here, where would you do something like this?
Yeah. One of the taglines that I got from the redevelopment of Burlington, I met the community development director that was there when they created Church Street Marketplace, and he said, you have to find your unfair advantage, and you have to leverage that. Everybody around here has a pretty landscape, and everybody has a nice, quality of life, but what do we have? And this is one of those things that we have. Alex,
Yeah, well, and I think that having the name Bennington really resonates. Bennington College and Bennington Museum and Bennington Potters. So it's just something to always be mindful of.
That's great. Jeannie?
Yeah, so this is a very exciting plan, and it feels like it would be energizing, and I'm wondering if you can, if you did see this as energizing the arts community, and if so, are there ways that you see new collaborations that are starting to emerge that we can build on in this community?
Do you want to answer that?
I mean, I would say case in point, just all of the different people that I've met since I have been involved more intimately in this community through the two organizations that I mentioned. I mean, meeting with Shannon and, sitting down with Matt Perry and any variety of people to work on a project, for instance, like Bennington Arts Weekend. That is a collaborative it's a collaborative effort, and there's a lot of networking and work to be done and ways to build off of each other. And even when I think it was Dave LaChance was at the steering committee meeting, he was mentioning some issues that he was having with not having submissions come to the calendar the way he wanted. And I was like, well, the Arts Council can help you. We can redirect in that way so that we can help make your calendar maybe the go-to place for arts events. Again, so we don't recreate the wheel, but we work together, and we can only do that through continued collaboration and meetings. And that task falls to the steering committee in many ways to continue to carry the torch, but we hope to do that in partnership with people like Shannon. So.
Super.
The Bennington Arts Weekend began when the Southwestern Vermont Crafts Festival came to Bennington several years ago. And that's a private corporation. It's owned by Tim Cianciola and Charlie Dooley. And they invited the culturals to come to the festival and have a tent there and whatnot. So that became the beginning of that collaboration. The idea was to expand on that event throughout the community. Last I spoke to them, they were spending $25,000 to promote that weekend in Bennington in outside media. So we have a $25,000 marketing budget helping promote that weekend to start from. So what we're trying to do is take that, leverage that, and make that a big weekend in Bennington. And then the first weekend in August is a big weekend for people to travel, and a lot of people do the same thing every year on that weekend, so we want to be on that list.
Other comments?
I just wanted to add, what you provided us with, the cost you're suggesting we jump on board for, it's one of the best deals that have come across my time on the select board. So thank you for that.
And basically, we've been asking you for $1,000 a year to help sponsor our big event for the year.
Can you keep it at that level indefinitely?
Forever. For the rest of your time on the select board.
That was good, Greg. That was quick. So you know that it is our preference to try to work these things into planning, future planning to the extent that we can. So I think probably the way to go about this would be to ask Shannon and Stuart to take a look at our budgets and come back to us with a proposal. Would you be willing to do that?
That would be great.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Is this something we can add to our January work sessions, kind of like we've suggested with the, what is it, the high school?
Sophomore summit.
Sophomore summit.
We talked about doing that last year.
Yeah.
Well, I think
But I'm not sure what happened.
with Shannon involved, I think we now are able to take a little bit more of a comprehensive look at what kind of marketing we're doing in town and what that marketing looks like, and then look to her for recommendations on strategic investments that we'd make on an annual basis and build those into your budget. So, but before we vote on $1,000 tonight, I guess I'd just like to have you and your boss take it up a little bit, Shannon, if you would, and come back to us with a proposal.
And I would like to say in promoting exposure, when I have Bennington Town Seal as a major sponsor and I go to other potential sponsors, it goes a long way. It gets people's attention, they feel engaged, and they're much more likely to sign on. So it is important.
Yeah, how do we make it so they don't have to wait to, to kind of get this information back? Does it have to come to the next select board meeting, they say we approve of it? Because it'd be nicer if we could say, if you have the $1,000, we all...
Can I wait till the next select board meeting?
What is the date for the next?
2 weeks.
24th.
24th, 2 weeks.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And Greg,
Make sure-
so-
Thank you for that.
You would have the option
Yeah, but
for
when
multiple years.
Greg, when we've supported Explosion, has that been this kind of a request?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we feel obligated to give you an update on how this started, where it came from, where we're at right now, when we ask for any money, and then we make our pitch. And like I said, the select board has been unanimously supportive. And
Well, that's because, as Carson pointed out, we've gotten a lot of bang for the buck, and so we're really grateful for that, but nevertheless, we have to make sure that we're in a position to make that investment again.
Especially this year.
Especially this year, yeah. And as we think about future investments, I think that's where it may become a little bit more interesting, when we start thinking about wayfinding signs and cultural trails and other things like that. Those will require a lot more partners and a lot more conversation and grant funding, and so we'll have to rely on the Planning Commission and the town staff to be super creative on that front. I don't think we can just cash flow that stuff.
Right.
So we'll look forward to future recommendations, I guess, on that. Other comments and questions from the board? No? Anything else from you folks? No?
we'll let you go.
Well, we're really glad to have this in front of us, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
As far as incorporating it in the town plan goes, I think, within this, there's a suggestion that it goes to planning commissions first. I think that's a good idea. This document, as written, doesn't quite fit with the town plan. It doesn't look like the town plan, doesn't read like the town plan, but there may be ways of incorporating parts of it, or a link to it, or something like that, where we can adopt it as our town policy, but not necessarily have to have it get printed in the same booklet as the town plan, something like that. So we'll let the planning commission chew on that when you're ready. Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. The next item on our agenda tonight is a presentation from Jason Dolmetsch, and this is and friends, I will say. This is something that I think concerns all of us, in that we have done a lot of work over the past several years thinking about lead in public water. And before you even start this, or while he's firing up his technology, I'd just like to remind everybody, and Dan, correct me if I get this wrong, but all of the public water lines that now serve Bennington are non-lead. Water mains. So, okay, so what I just want everyone to know, we care very much about lead, we care very much about water, but I think what we're going to be talking about tonight is that bit of connection between the public supply and the private user.
And can I ask, is this an action thing or just?
That's a good question. So we may have a conflict of interest if we're being asked to take an action tonight. Stuart, do you have advice for us on that?
I looked at Jason for that. He does conclude that they may be seeking a select board approval to prepare a planning loan document, which will begin the process of applying for the ultimate grant and perhaps moving to a bond vote sometime in the future. So if that is in fact a potential tonight, Bill, you may want to
Yeah, if that is the case, then I should probably recuse myself.
So may I ask, are we not doing a two-meeting?
Well, we do that
process?
when that has been something that we have done when it feels appropriate. In this particular situation, tell us about your conflict of interest.
I have an existing contract with MSK, so I mean, just
Okay.
on the face of it, it doesn't look good if I'm voting however I vote.
Since we're
So I just need to know
going
if
to a
it's an
vote at some point, whether it's tonight or in two meetings, why don't you recuse yourself on
That's
this?
just
You
fine.
don't have to leave the table, but why don't you just,
Okay, yeah.
we'll put it in the record, Nancy, that he's recusing. Thank you. Got your technology going?
We got it.
All right, hit it.
I saw that we have 50 minutes scheduled for this, and I'm hoping that we can get through this in a more expedited fashion. So I'm just here to present a funding opportunity that's become available through the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund for 100% reimbursable funds for lead-containing replacements in public water systems. So just as an overview, I'll be speaking about the funding source opportunities that are available. I'll sort of just remind people about the past work that was completed on lead service line mapping in the town of Bennington, as well as replacement strategies, and then what we're looking at for next steps to secure funding. So in brief, the State of Vermont Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund comes out with an intended use plan every year. This year, they've identified $2.2 million to replace, for 100% reimbursable funds to replace lead-containing components. And this is made available on a first-come, first-served basis. And those components include mains that would contain lead, public and private lead service lines, and fixtures. In general, the town of Bennington does not have lead mains. However, through the work, the mapping work that we did over the last year, we have identified several potential and several known and potential lead service lines, both on the public and the private side of the water service line as well. And then in addition to that, you can apply for the replacement of fixtures. An additional subsidy of up to $3.8 million is also available to communities identified as disadvantaged. Right now, we believe Bennington may also qualify for those funds as well because they meet the definition of a municipality that has a below state average MHI or median household income that has user costs greater than 1% of MHI. The past work that was completed for the town, just to remind people, Bennington was one of two communities last year that applied for and received a grant to undertake investigating lead service line mapping of either known or suspected lead service lines. And as such, Bennington's one of the more proactive communities in Vermont aiming to get rid of their lead service lines. That included inventorying known or suspected lead service lines. It included the creation of an interactive GIS inventory of water infrastructure, and that includes also a lead outreach and information websites available to residents, and then also identifies replacement opportunities, one of which was, if large grant funding became available, that this would be something we go for. So just to give everybody an overview, a reminder of sort of where lead service lines are, they are generally located around the oldest parts of the community, which is majority downtown and some of the surrounding areas as well that were constructed prior to the 1890 or constructed prior to 1924. This map is available on an interactive website with the town of Bennington. So if you see yourself in this very small image here as either orange or light orange or some kind of color of purple, that means that we've identified your property as a potential lead service line. There's also available on that website, if you know information, if you know that your service line has been replaced or is not lead, that you can reach out to town staff members and let them know that, and the map can be updated. So this was part of our fact finding. It's still interactive, and it's important that people engage in it. And just as an overview, to give people just a reminder of the sort of the scale of Bennington's problem, we've estimated that the town has somewhere between 780 or 1,580 partial or full lead service lines. And that estimated number, total cost of replacing all of those lines is somewhere between $6 and $11 million. When we did the initial mapping, we did complete a mailing. We got a 5% response rate. We do expect that some or many of the lines that we've identified have been replaced, either by individuals or in past replacement programs. But these are the ones that we can categorically say that we just don't know, and we'd like to know and make sure that it gets replaced. So, framing the problem, what are the steps? The steps are to engage in a planning loan, and that planning loan is available at a 0% interest rate. Those payments are deferred until construction, because what we're proposing here is that this is an entirely lead service line replacement project. That money would also be 100% forgivable as well. So there would be what we're recommending here is that the planning process undertakes essentially the environmental review requirements that are subject to the loan document requirements for the entire area, so that area can get cleared in advance. That we will undertake yet another outreach to try to get all the lead service lines identified in Bennington, or clear the ones that are non-lead, and then ultimately aim for a final design and construction document and permitting for any of the identified lead service lines up to the amount of money that can be reimbursable during this year's intended use plan. The state has not promised, but has indicated that this bucket of money will likely become available in future years as well. So even though this is a 100% reimbursable loan, they still require a bond vote to incur debt. What we're recommending is that that bond vote encompass the entire potential borrowing amount that would be forgiven, and that we go out to the voters during town meeting day. And then ultimately, once that's completed, to complete a construction loan application. So at this point, what I'm availing you, the select board, of this opportunity, and then asking if you guys are interested in undertaking the next step so that we can look to replace the lead service lines that are known in town.
Just may I interrupt you? Just you're on a roll here, but
I'm done.
You are done.
Yes.
Perfect. So on that very point, which is the pivotal point, after all, the money point, if we bond for the whole amount, expecting to get paid back for the whole amount, is there even a remote possibility that we could get the planning part done and then the funds could not be available? Or is there a way of knowing that the funds are available before we start spending planning dollars?
So it is first comes, first serve. There's basically two pots of money that are available that Bennington could get access to that would be 100% reimbursable. One is the $2.2 million that's identified specifically for 100% reimbursement for lead-containing component replacements. And then the disadvantaged money in addition to that the town could also get the up to 35% of the total construction value available to them. In this case, that would equal 100% reimbursement for the town in the whole scheme of things. So the short answer is yes, that could happen. The way that the planning loan is, because it's a first come, first served basis. So the way that we get ourselves ready for that is to complete all the steps as quickly as we can. However, that said, it seems likely that the intended use plan in subsequent years will also include lead service line replacement money available at 100% reimbursable. If this planning loan is undertaken, it's at a 0% interest rate, and it's non-repayable. You don't have to repay it for 5 years if you don't undertake the construction project.
So it's up to the legislature to keep, we have to hammer on our legislature to keep making.
It's up to the SRF.
The
It's up to
SRF.
yeah, right.
Yeah. Mhm.
Correct.
Okay. So other questions from board members or comments? This is not, in many ways, it's a fantastic opportunity because it's 100% funding for replacing lead lines, which we know are bad. There's just a little bit of risk. And I guess, so our job is to analyze how much risk are we talking about. So before we go into citizens' questions, Sam, I'm going to go through with the board and see what we've got at the board level. Stuart.
Donald, there really is very little risk. Even if the community in March were to vote positively on a $10 million bond, we will only be at risk for the monies we spend.
Planning.
We're not going to necessarily take the full 10 million and hope to spend it. We'll be spending what the state has available so that we will be reimbursed. So the risk is small.
It's just the planning money.
Yes, the planning money say the only risk there is if you do the planning and you don't do the project, then you may be at risk for those funds. But there is a delay or a deferred payment of five-year frame. So I would guess it would be unlikely that if we undertake the planning that we would not undertake at least as much of the project as we could possibly do while those funds exist.
Okay. Other board members?
Can you just clarify how people have been or not been notified, referring back to the map that you had? So are the people that are identified there, do they know?
Yes, so we, in this planning process, we identified, there were 2 books that essentially identified all the lines that were constructed between 1883 and 1983. And the construction or installation of lead service lines fell off around 1924. That's when they stopped installing lead service lines for the most part in the town of Bennington. And all of the units that we either could not categorically say were not lead service lines or had been identified as originally being installed as lead service lines were sent letters.
Okay.
And basically, the original part of that grant included that outreach, and then going to each house that people had responded to, and either confirming or saying that service line had been replaced or was not lead.
Great.
We got a really low response rate. The goal would be to get a much higher response rate, both through, once again, sending letters out to community members, identifying the funding source and saying your participation is critical in order to get these lead service lines replaced. So we're hoping that with the dangling of free money out there, that we will get a much higher response rate and be able to put a good first round of a package together so that people can get, we can begin to pick off larger sections of town.
And the other thing, can you just speak to, when you were referencing fixtures, what you mean is a faucet?
Yes, fixtures, a faucet is a fixture, that's correct.
Right, I just wanted people to realize that. So how would one know, because you aren't going to go into every person's home and test their faucet, how would one know if their faucet was at risk of having lead?
So any faucet constructed prior to 2012 has faucet built prior to 2012 is considered non-lead free. So the likelihood of people having non-lead free faucets is pretty high.
I guess. Wow.
What I'm recommending to the town, because lead service lines, in our opinion, poses a much greater risk to health, especially, and we saw that through our sampling that we did as a part of that grant process. And since we believe that the scale of lead service lines in Bennington is high enough that we're identifying lead service line replacement as the primary objective of this application.
But that's something, I mean, a family could easily replace their
Yes.
faucets on their own.
That's right.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
I'd just like to add one point, and that is with respect to any copper piping, the solder that's involved with sealing contains lead, and it's recommended that you run a tap if you're going to drink water for at least 15 seconds, and it'll flush it out.
And all of that is available on the website, the town's website, which talks about how to reduce your exposure to lead.
Other board comments on this?
I'm just, so the timing on this, when will we need to make a decision in order to meet the deadlines that are on, that we have here? So April 30th would be the vote, is that?
No,
So-
March, the first Tuesday in March is the town meeting. That's when the vote will occur.
Okay, so this April 30th.
These deadlines that I've identified are ones that are the requirements for the SRF loan program to remain eligible for. So we have to complete these steps in this criteria. I'm going to recommend that we do this faster.
Okay.
Because we want to be we want to be the first one in the door.
The first one applying for this fund.
That's
this
right.
funding.
Because you were clear to say it's first come, first served multiple times now.
That's true.
Chad, do you have anything? No? Jason, so this is really a continuation of the work you've already started. This is not a new, really, it would be awkward for us to change horses at this point in terms of your company. You've spent a lot of time figuring this out and mapping this. You've got all the data, so it only makes sense at this point for us to continue working with you on this.
That's certainly your call, but we would love to continue working on this and helping the town out. So.
Well, and just a flag for this board, we've been very focused on RFPs and making sure that there are RFPs for as many things as possible, both for the sense of fairness, but also for make sure that the town's getting the best deal. But as part of that process that we're in the middle of kind of working through, we have identified that processes that are in the works where you have a substantial investment with an existing contractor where they have data, and it doesn't make sense to start all over again, that we not consider that a new task. So I guess that's the way I would see that as this individual board member. Feels to me, and I'm not sure if we want to vote on this, but it feels to me that that we could go ahead and get this application going without actually committing to very much. So our real vote would be when that application was either approved or not, right?
Right. So this is more a presentation to avail you of the opportunity and to gauge your interest in going after it. There's a few more steps involved in getting the step one funding secured, which would be the first planning loan. And that would have to come back for a board vote at that point.
Well, so I'm not sure how everybody else feels, but I bet many people here would feel like we would like as much free money as possible, and we would like to get rid of as many lead lines as possible with that free money. So, any dissent on that point?
You did that very well.
More free money, fewer service lines.
So, just a sec, Sam, any other comments from board members?
I think, assuming it goes for a bond vote in the spring, communicating that is going to be really important because they're voting in favor of a bond, but there's actually no cost. So we're just.
I'm really hoping that we'll
cognizant of that.
identify all the lead service lines that we can and that they will all become extreme advocates for the passage of a bond.
I would if I had lead line coming into my house, that's for sure. I think Flint, Michigan, so. Okay, well, I'd like to at least briefly allow for public comment on this. Sam, you have something you'd like to say?
Yes, 2 seconds. Thank you for recognizing me, Chairman Campbell, I almost caught myself. The key answer to this, and I hope the Bennington Select Board would take stock along with getting the word out. I know people don't read the banner. I mean, they got to read the banner. I'm definitely going to push on this issue. Get in touch with your plumber, get your water lines tested if you know that you have lead lines. This is dead serious. Ever since I've been into this town, Bennington has done great of replacing these lead lines, but there's still apparently a lot more that have to be done. And fixtures prior to 2012, I mean, just think that, you buy a fixture, you think it's lead-free, don't second guess yourself. Get your lines tested. Is there anybody that does testing locally? Does Town of Bennington, if you brought a water sample, would they test for lead, or that?
We do on a rotating basis. We have a number of spots in the community where we do testing for lead. Generally, we pick places or homes that are, in a sense, low-flow areas or where incidents of lead pipe replacements have been known to take place. But I think that's only on a 1 every 3 years, and it's reported.
If a citizen would bring a sample, would you allow them to have testing for lead, or is?
I'll look to Jason.
Our office has a mobile sample unit.
You will come to a house and test for lead?
Correct. It goes down to 2 micrograms per liter. It's not like a state licensed laboratory. The way that the town does and what we've done for certified laboratories is to send it off to Endyne, which is a testing laboratory nearby, but it can give you an indication of whether there's soluble lead inside your...
Right, because I mean, you go as far as the service lines in your home, you're kind of defeating the purpose. I mean, you can't get all of that out, but you certainly try, and I thank you for your efforts. Thank you.
So I'm not going to pick on anybody, but I do see we have some town staff here. Is there anybody that wants to speak to any of these points from the other town staff, or you just hear out of interest? You don't have to. I'd be interested in your perspective if there's anything we need to know.
I think it's a great opportunity, and we should jump on board with it. It's a great thing for the community if we can get this loan and move forward with it.
And I think it's also important that, and Jason didn't mention this, but the state's developing a policy that if in fact we are working on a water main and we determine that our portion of the main is lead, most likely the residence portion is also lead. The mandate is now, it's either in place or it's coming soon, that we will have to replace the entire lead line, and the homeowner would have to pay their share. We can no longer simply replace our portion of the line and leave theirs lead, because it actually increases the potential for
That's correct.
releases.
There's no more partial lead service line replacements.
Well, it seems like this is consistent with so many government things that happen, in which there's a period of time that there's some money to incentivize good behavior, and then it becomes law. And so I say we jump on this opportunity with every bit of energy we can. We try to get the money, we try to minimize our risk, and we move to a bond vote as quickly as possible. That would be how I feel we should start this. So I'm not sure we need to take a vote tonight. I don't know if people want to, but Stuart, do you feel that there's enough to get a proposal
I think
together?
that Jason can move forward with the preparation of the planning grant application, and when that is ready, we'll bring it back before you to seek your support.
And is there a time, what's the timing? When do we need to do that in order to be able to vote?
Well, we need to do that before December 31st, but I have a feeling we'll be back before you within a month.
All right, so we have plenty.
Or less.
We'll be back soon.
Make the next meeting.
That's good.
Hey, Don, could I make a public comment?
So is it unrelated to this topic?
It's related to the topic, but a public comment, a question. Just, I want to ask, if it's a small amount at risk, what's the amount? Is there an amount or no?
I think we need to hear that. I think we need to hear that from the proposal.
Right, and that's what that's
right. Yeah. So, right. Thank you very much. Yeah, sure. Come on up to the mic, please, Rose.
I just wanted to know what I meant for first come, first served. I'm not sure
What that means?
what it means or what it
So It means that the money is made available by the state and that the community that applies for it first is the one who receives it, and those funds get drawn down until they're no longer available during that particular fiscal year.
So we would be competing with every other town in Vermont that jumps on this possibility.
That's right. Now, we're the only town that has actually copped up to having lead service lines, so.
So we're ahead.
That's right, we're ahead.
But we lose our lead if we don't keep moving.
That's right.
Okay. Lose our lead, right. Larry, thanks for letting me put you on the spot there. Appreciate your input. All right, any other questions for Jay? Okay.
Great.
Thank you very much for the work you're doing, and let's keep this water clean. The next item on our agenda is appointments to boards and commissions. Stuart, what have you got for us?
Well, I provided in your packet 4 different boards and commissions where the persons applying for the position are essentially incumbents and they are uncontested. And we talked the last time that we would move to appoint these folks and not pursue interviews at the present time. I can report that we are now, I think, up to 6 potential applicants for the Energy Commission. That does include Select Board Member Scully, but we're starting to see some activity in that regard. Thank you.
Okay, so no action required at this point.
Well, you would need to make a motion to appoint these individuals to these committees.
Okay, so do I have a motion to appoint these? These would be people already known to us at this point. 6, isn't it? No, 5, yeah.
I move that we accept
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Carson. Any discussion? All in favor, please say so. Aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. Glad to get these boards and commissions filled. Let's keep working on the Energy Committee. The next item is the vacant board seat discussion, and I'm going to start by recapping what I think is true from our charter, and Stuart, correct me if I get this wrong, but we've been very lucky to have Carson. We've been lucky to have Carson give us enough notice that we have a little time to think about what it's going to be like after Carson's gone.
Sad.
Which will take a while. We have 3 options, as I understand it. We could choose to do nothing, since Carson's term would be up in March, and we could just let the public re-vote. We could get by with 6 members. We could hold an election to elect another person for the rest of that term, so it would just be holding an election for 6 or 8, 7 months, whatever's left. And we could appoint somebody. So I have my own preferences on what we should do, but I guess I would be open to thoughts from the board on what they think might be a good way to go forward. So.
I have a suggestion.
I'm not going to add value to this one.
Yeah, go take a break. Yeah, thank you, Carson.
The paid family leave for bereaving family members on the governor's desk, so we might all qualify with Carson leave. That's just a joke. Anyway, with respect to the last election, it's pretty close. And
Sorry about that. Sorry about that, Rose. The last election was really close, and the runner-up, well, I think would be a logical and wise choice.
Okay. Other thoughts?
I would agree with that.
Jean?
I'm inclined to be in favor of leaving the seat empty. I feel like, let's see, it would be August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, 8 months. I think we all know how long it takes to get up to speed and understand what we're even doing, and I don't think a new person who's never sat on a select board would have the time to really understand in those short months to really get a handle on what's going on. I also don't think that a 3-3 vote is really likely. I know, it would be an even number, and if I guess there was a contentious vote, you would choose to not vote, and then it would be not a tie. So that would be my preference. I would rather have just leave it open and have someone run in March.
Okay. Chad, Bill, what do you got?
Well, I don't think holding a special election should be even considered. I think it's like $2,500, so I don't think that's money well spent. The results of the last election show that there was a lot of support for the candidate that didn't get in. It was very close, and I would consider that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm not in favor, I guess my least favorite is leaving it empty, actually, because I think just boards like this function best with a little bit, with more plurality, and I think the more ideas, the better. Holding an election is not my favorite just because of the expense and what it puts town staff through and what have you. I like Bruce. I think he brings a skill set that we don't currently have, a legal background, for one, which is valuable. I would be in favor of an appointment and tend to think that the person that, it was a close race. So I think he would be a relatively good choice. Maybe my choice.
For what it's worth, I am in the camp of appointment also. Gina, I don't want to leave you out on the edge here, but I wonder if you could live with it if we did decide to vote. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I appreciate your perspective on this, and I think it's good. I do think we should leave it to the voters as much as possible, and perhaps in this situation, we are lucky enough to have had a very close race, so we would not be appointing somebody that was a, loser, but somebody.
Comment?
There's no guarantee he'll say yes.
There's no guarantee.
Right? I mean, yeah, no, Bruce is great. I have nothing against Bruce.
Well, as I said, I think if we were appointing somebody out of the blue, it would feel a little more uncomfortable to me, whereas we have quite a lot of, a lot of voters voted in favor of him.
So can I just push a little bit?
Please do.
If Bruce declines, would you still be in favor of appointing someone other than him? Maybe that's another question, and we don't need to.
Well, I'm with Chad in that I am too cheap to want to run an election just for a short seat like this.
No, I understand, but would you want to appoint someone else?
So I would be deciding between letting it run out and appointing somebody else, and I think the answer for me is no.
Okay.
I think the reason this appointment feels good is because the voters have given us a really strong nod on this.
Okay.
And that makes this situation a little different than just appointing somebody that we think might be good.
Okay.
And I might note that there is a risk to running a 6-member board. The law requires that you get 4 positive votes because that is the majority of the current number of members. So you wouldn't end up with a 3-3 tie is no action.
Right.
A 3-2 vote is no action. You could find yourselves in constantly voting and not being able to move and make any movement because you need 4 positive votes.
Well, I'm not sure what the pleasure of this board is, but it is my opinion that Bruce Leclerc would be a very good board member, and I think we'd be lucky to have him on if he would join us. I suppose I would accept a motion for me to approach him and invite him to do that if people would like that to happen. Second. Okay. Any further discussion? The motion right now is for me to ask him if he'd be willing to serve, Nancy, not anything more than that.
Just so the public's clear, he would sit in that until next March or next election, and then the seat is vacant, or would have to run for election at that point.
Yeah. So my suggestion would be that I ask him, and then we bring it back to a next meeting. If he says yes, then we vote on it then. Does that sound good to people?
That sounds great.
Okay. All in favor of that? Aye. Aye. Opposed?
Just sort of clear.
Kirsten, staying out of it. Carson.
Hashtag Bruce.
All right. Vacant board seats. Check. Manager's report.
No action items tonight. I should note that the bids are being opened on the PFO-related construction projects. I believe there are going to be 5 contracts let. I am receiving permits from the Agency for the Water Quality Division. VTrans is now posting proposed permits and conditions for work within the state highway right-of-way, basically Route 7A. So there is activity ongoing. 3 bids were opened last week. I don't have the results of those bids, and I think 2 more are coming very soon. So we're getting very close to construction getting underway in the northeastern quadrant of the community on the PFO-related work. On the Morgan Spring delivery system, a little bit further update, especially with regard to the funding. The company that we have been talking with, Ice River, out of Pittsfield, Mass., has now been purchased by Premier Waters, I believe is the name of the company. It is a national firm. They are retaining the Ice River folks, as far as I know, certainly their operations manager. They are aware of the project and the proposed participation by the company, and they are reviewing the plans, and I hope to be able to report within the next 2 meetings of whether or not we have a way forward. We will close on the land, we will own the land, and I will work very hard to try to give us a funding way forward without, or at least by minimizing the ratepayer impacts on this project.
Can you just offer a reminder that you said the proposed investment by Ice River or Premier Water? What's the proposed?
We don't have a number yet. Ice River had expressed interest some time ago if we were to relocate to be a participant in the funding in exchange for a reduced cost of water, so that they can get a payback on their investment.
Over what period of time would they get a rate?
We hadn't even gotten that far, Jim. It's right now very speculative. We've told them what we would like to see, which is some payment, perhaps 50% reduction in what their contracted rate would be to allow them to regain their capital investment over the course of 2 to 3 years. So we don't know what that will be, and I've not had formal discussions at all with Premier. They have just acquired the business, and so we'll see where that takes us.
So to Sam's point, though, the only thing we're exposed to as of right now is the cost of the real estate.
Right, and we have that money in reserve so that we will be able to go through that process.
And furthermore, just to be very clear about this, the reason we're doing this is to lower water rates in the long run. So we don't have to get rid of this water if we don't want to, but selling this water helps us. Right now, the sale of water reduces people's water bills by 4 to 5%. And so we want to do that and more if we can.
That's correct. This has the potential to generate upwards of $200,000 a year.
So we'll nearly double what we've been selling.
Okay.
And I think that's all. I think last week we talked a little bit, not last week, but, well, maybe, was it last week? 2 weeks ago, about the sewer backup behind the museum. It turns out it was a block of concrete from the manhole that had collapsed into the line and blocked it. That has been corrected, and I think we were in the process of televising those lines.
So it's all clean now? Should be fine?
Just so you know, yeah, question way in the back.
You got a question in the back?
Okay. Question about this? Come on up and identify yourself, please. And Jim, can you make a little room there? Sorry. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Walter Saban. Sometimes help out at the municipal meetings, and having some people they are cutting back instead of having two meetings. I mean, two
You're talking about Meals on Wheels?
Yeah, he's talking about Meals on Wheels. Yep.
First, said to me, for last time, they couldn't get down to one. And a lot of people are complaining about it.
Yeah, okay.
And then they couldn't get on the drivers. So the lines are holding
Yeah. As you know, that's a nonprofit organization that does that, and so we are trying to work with them to figure out what we can do to help them deliver the good services to the extent that we possibly can. So, thank you. We're working on it. Thank you for the comment, but it's not our program, but we are trying to be supportive of it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
One last thing, Donald. I didn't want to get this confused, but within the last week, we have had a sitting Housing Board Authority member resign due to job conflicts. So there will be another open seat on the Housing Authority that we will have to look to fill.
Okay, great. Thank you, Stuart. So as far as calendar goes, I apologize to, if anyone's here that came to hear about the...
Before you go to calendar, can I ask you a question of Stuart? It's actually, I'm glad RJ and Larry are here. Just information about paving costs. Does that seem as though that is public information? You shared some concerns about the cost of paving going up with us. Can you just touch base? I mean, on those numbers, it seems incredibly relevant, especially if it's going to impact the amount of paving, the expectations of community members, and where it might impact.
I opened up the bid last week for the paving projects, and it went up $12 a ton, which is a huge increase. We haven't seen anything.
What's the $12, just so we know the difference of...
Asphalt.
No, I mean, it's not $12 from $1,000, it's $12, just what are the numbers?
What were we paying last year?
Last year compared to this year.
70 something, right?
It's a major percentage compared to what you paid last year, because it's only $73. Yeah, it's a
more than a 10% increase. Okay.
Yeah. 72 last year. 74 last year.
RJ?
Excuse me?
What accounts for it?
Asphalt, the price of asphalt.
I just think it's important to let the community know that it's going to impact the paving projects per your email coming into the summer and fall.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
Okay. And what are you guessing the decrease is going to be? You normally hit a certain mileage per year. Where do you see that's going to impact?
Last year we had a good year. We had like 11 miles, 12 miles because the PFOA contributed 6-7 miles, and this year it's going to be around 2 miles. Next year will be another good year with East Road, Chapel Road, Holt Lane, all the places that are affected with the next 2 years' water projects.
RJ, as long as you're there, can you give us an update on River Street and what's happening there?
River Street will be taking off soon. We'll probably start the demo around the last week of this month, and from there we'll be digging for curb and getting the sidewalks ready, and paving will be last. That'll be quite a project just because the road now has concrete underneath, like 8-inch thick slabs, and there's also a hidden sluiceway underneath, which we don't really know other than talk through history that how we're going to backfill that, because we don't want a pipe failing after the road is paved. So,
one more question for you. Pleasant and School Street, indulge me.
Quick, please.
Yeah, I am. Pleasant and School Street, can you give us an update on that? What's going on there?
The project that's going on now, there was a grant we received like 6 or 7 years ago. That's kind of out of, we're not going to work on that one, but that's all private contractor. So they're, I think, pouring curb tomorrow, I'm told. Then there'll be sidewalk. It's kind of a small project just on School Street and a little bit up Pleasant Street. The town, we will go in sometime this summer and replace the opposite side. So the poles will be moved, so a full sidewalk on that side, because we really struggled. Yes. Yeah. We struggled with plowing that for a lot of years.
I'm well aware of that.
RJ, thank you very much. You know, we really are lucky to have you here tonight to give us this update, and thank you for all you do for the town. We appreciate that. Stuart, we were lucky to have RJ here tonight, but it probably would be good as you set up your manager's reports at this time of year, just to highlight any construction or things like that that we should know about as we're going along. So.
Be glad to.
Thank you.
They're posted every week on the website and in the banner.
And maybe you can just briefly mention them on camera so that we, everybody's caught up. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, RJ. Okay, so in June, we are striving to get water and sewer budgets adopted by the board and the rates set. Everybody has their budgets. Everybody's read them thoroughly and going to be ready for next Monday's off-cycle meeting, right? 5:30? Here, 5:30 here, just to discuss water and sewer budgets. And Stuart, at the next meeting, we're going to talk town and DID tax rates, right?
Yes, the last meeting in June will be focused on tax rates and water sewer rates.
And the manager's meanwhile sets the employee salary for the coming year for budgeting purposes. In addition...
Can I say something?
Yep.
As a person who likes to close loops on things, can we add, I don't know if it's an agenda item or it just needs to be part of Stu's report, or at least the possibility is there, that when a question is asked and you do the research and answer a public person, a member of the public's question, I love it when you answer the question publicly. Like last week, or last month, I believe you asked about, Rose, you asked about the computer training that was supposed to happen at the senior center. So I'd love to hear the answer to that question. And I think it would be a really great idea. I also have another question unrelated to that, but I don't know how to work that into the agenda or where it should be.
Normally, I would include that in my follow-up in the manager's report, but just to give you some follow-up, Carrie Fabricius, our program director, has reached out to the CDC, and they are willing to offer a computer training course, including a course in some smartphone accessibility. There is a cost to that, but we're currently working to understand how much of that we can offset so that people who wish to take it, who are members of the senior center, can afford to take the course. It'll be at the CDC.
Oh, the course is at the CDC,
Yes.
not at the senior
Yes.
center.
Yes, because they have computers that they know work. Ours may or may not work.
So yes, just as a general point, Stuart, thank you very much for doing that, and it would be good to follow up on that. So we have water and sewer budgets next Monday at 5:30. We have on 6/24, we'll be hearing from the Building Brighter Futures Collaborative, the Rescue Squad, we'll be working to set the DID taxes, and we will move the I guess that's it, right? We're not sure yet about when we will hear from the rec center. I think we're probably looking at the July 8th meeting to hear more back from the rec center at that point. And so that's what we're looking at for the next couple of meetings. Yeah, UCS on July 8th, we're looking at UCS and Goldstone Phase 2.
We also talked about maybe doing senior services then, so I think we probably need to just finalize that.
Yep, we'll do some work on that. Okay, so other business, I think we have a vote tomorrow, right? Is there anything we need to know about that, Stuart?
Yes, there is a vote tomorrow. It is downstairs here at the fire facility. If you live in North Bennington or resident of North Bennington, it'll be at the North Bennington town offices. We are voting on the merged school district budgets.
And it's 10 to 7.
10 a.m., yeah.
Doesn't it not start at 7 in the morning?
It's 10.
It starts at 10.
It's 10 to 7.
10 to 7, 10 a.m. So that's different.
We also have in front of us, just in terms of, we're moving into other business here. We did get this notice of hearing on the Warner Solar Project. This is on June 20th. If anybody's interested, there will be a site visit at 4 o'clock. There will be an informal meeting at 6, and then a formal meeting held by the Public Utilities Commission in the library at 7 o'clock.
What's the date again?
June 20th. Other business from the board? Bill, you got anything for us?
I left early for the last meeting, so I forgot to properly thank RJ. I took a nice tour of the highway department, learned a lot. I was amazed by how they keep that facility. If you haven't been there on the inside, it's unbelievable. I mean, every truck in its bay, every tool where it goes, I was very impressed, so thank you for that. And then he was kind enough, and you were with me on that, and I hope you had as good a time as I did. It's great. Then we went over to the wastewater treatment plant, and thanks to Ronnie Bull and John D'Amore, and I got to see the digesters down and how they're getting beyond all that, and I saw how you spend that many millions of dollars, and it really looks like it should cost that much. But it was really amazing to see and to talk about, the problems that they have and meet the guys and go through the facility. So thank you very much, all that, and you still got the flower pots are out and on Main Street, and you cleaned out the tree boxes and everything else, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Chad, anything? No? Jeannie?
Nope.
What you got?
A couple questions for Stu. The Stark letter.
Yes. The Stark letter.
That's not
That's the commemorative sign installed.
I got Phil's phone number today. The foreman's going to call him just to make sure where it's going, so I would assume within 5 days.
Good. The second thing is I've got some complaints from Dermody Road. What's going on out there? The complaint that I heard is that there are semis speeding down Dermody Road, and they're busting up the pavement that was repaired last year.
I have no idea why semis.
I'll be out there tomorrow. You know anything about it, RJ?
There's logging going on Woodstock.
Yeah.
But I don't know anything about.
Okay.
Yeah, there is. There's actually a bunch of, I was there today, there's a bunch of big trucks right around the corner. I don't know about Dermody, but right around the corner. They're actually blocking the road and
It's a state project out there in Whipstock. There's state-owned land up on the hill there where the beacon is.
Do you know who the foreman is?
I do not. I met the state forester there prior to any work going on, but possibly that could be, but I don't know of any other projects in that area.
I'm trying to think exactly where it is. I think it's on Vale. It's on Vale right at the corner. Right at the corner of Vale and Woodstock. There's a big logging thing happening with a bunch of 18-wheelers.
I'll be going out there tomorrow morning if you want to meet me at like 9 o'clock, 8:30? 8:30?
I think I have an 8 o'clock tomorrow, but
Why don't you guys talk about this afterwards?
Okay.
I just want to clarify the pavement bids. I have it on my phone. They're $76 this year. Last year, they're $64.
Okay.
And you even said in your email that you source local contractors even, and their prices were even higher.
Yes, we were well over $100 with one local contractor, yes.
I just think it's important to mention because we constantly are talking about how do we support local economy, and there's a massive difference in the price when you look local on that one.
Actually, the highest price came from the closest plant to us, which you wouldn't think would be the case, but because of trucking. But
Worth saying. Thanks, sir.
Carson, anything from you tonight?
No, thank you.
No? Jean?
Yeah, can you just clarify the status of the repayment from Mr. Crowell?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
We have turned Mr. Prowell's account over to our town council. Merrill Bent will be handling that. I don't know specifically what has happened over the last couple of days, but we'll be taking legal action against him.
Okay. Thank you.
And the money that we loaned, and it wasn't really even a loan, was not taxpayer money, as was stated in the letter.
No. The money that was loaned to Mr. Crowell came from the Bennington Revolving Loan Program, the Economic Development Fund. It is now considered a loan, not a grant, because he failed to follow through on the conditions this board set. So he will be required to repay the entire 11-some-odd thousand. He didn't take all of the funds. We stopped the third payment request because we were unhappy with the progress that was not being made.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I would accept a motion to adjourn. Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Good night, everybody.